hadn't seen Isaiah Keys in over 8 years. When I heard about the funeral, it came by email. Some distant cousin of his had somehow found my address, probably through the old alumni directory from St. Dunstan's boarding school. I almost didn't open it. The subject line just read, "Memorial for Isaiah Keys. He died in Morocco." That's what it said. No details, just unexpected complications while traveling. I sat there at my kitchen table rereading the 2-sentence announcement, tapping the corner of my phone against the wood like that would knock some clarity loose. We weren't best friends, not really. More like roommates by accident. Sophomore year dorm shuffle put us together in the smallest double on the top floor. He was quiet, unusually so, but not in a brooding way. Isaiah wasn't the type to insert himself. His presence just sort of waited for you to notice it. Still, I remembered him. I remembered the late night hums he did when he thought I was asleep, the long conversations we had once the lights were off, when we'd talk about life after school like it was some abstract, distant planet. He'd been funny in this slow, observational way that took a beat to register. He loved dumb trivia. He hated elevators. He never ate apples with the skin on. And apparently, he was dead now. The memorial was 2 states over, somewhere deep in Georgia, small town called Crestwood. It was held in the back hall of a church that looked like it had been picked up from the 1800s and gently set down between 2 gas stations. Half the pews were empty. The people who did show were mostly older, extended family maybe, or neighbors from when he was a kid. Not one face from St. Dunstan's. I felt out of place almost immediately, too overdressed, too northern. When someone asked if I'd like to say a few words, I instinctively said yes before fully processing it. I stepped up to the little podium set up near a table of framed photos and wilting roses. Most of the pictures were old. Isaiah as a toddler, a young teen, him holding a puppy. None from our school years, none of me. I cleared my throat and started slowly. Isaiah Keys and I were roommates at boarding school. We weren't always close, but we lived together, shared space. You learn someone in that setting. You learn who they are when they think no one's watching. I glanced up. A woman in the front row dabbed her eyes with a crumpled tissue. I remember once, he stayed up all night helping me rewrite a paper I nearly failed. Didn't ask for anything in return. Didn't even gloat when it saved my grade. He just said, "Told you not to use Wikipedia." That was Isaiah. A few people chuckled politely, and sometimes at night he'd hum to himself. No lyrics, just low little melodies like lullabies. Said it helped him sleep. I paused, unsure why that memory had crept up. He was one of the kindest people I've ever met. I'm sorry we lost touch. I stepped down after that. Not much else to say. I'd already said his name twice, without thinking about it. First when I introduced myself. Second when I described the humming. Afterward, I didn't linger. A woman with tight silver curls tried to hand me a paper plate of lemon bars, but I declined and stepped outside into the heavy Georgia heat. There was one other familiar face from school, Derek Platt. He'd been in our class, though in a different dorm, a little louder, always surrounded by people. We hadn't kept in touch either, but we recognized each other immediately. "Dude," Derek said, pulling me into a quick, awkward hug. "Wild, right? When I got the message, I had to read it like 3 times. Isaiah Keys, man. Gone." That made 3. I didn't even think about it. We grabbed a couple beers at a grim little bar tucked behind a gas station. It was mostly empty except for 2 guys playing pool and a bartender who didn't seem to care if we nursed our drinks all night. "Do you remember when Isaiah made that fake ghost noise in the hallway to scare the junior kids?" Derek asked, grinning. "Oh my God," I laughed. "And then he got caught and somehow convinced the dorm master it was an air pressure anomaly. Like, what does that even mean? He had that weird calm energy, like he could talk anyone into anything. Yeah, and the way he'd narrate random shit, like he'd watch you eat cereal and say, 'The man chooses his weapon carefully, knowing what's at stake.'" I took a long sip. He was smart, real smart, smart and weird. He used to sleep with his blanket covering everything but his mouth. Derek paused. Huh, I never noticed that, no. I only caught it once when I came in late. He said he couldn't stand the feeling of air on his face. We both went quiet for a moment. The hum of the beer fridge filled the silence. Then Derek said more softly, "You know how he died?" I shook my head. Just said complications, that's all the message said. He nodded slowly. I heard he collapsed, some kind of breathing issue. They found him alone in a hotel room. Might have been asthma, or maybe mold, I don't know. They cremated him right away. I leaned back in my chair. That's a shitty way to go. Derek raised his bottle. To Isaiah Keys. I lifted mine too. We finished our beers. I drove back to the motel, some 2-story roadside thing with a blinking vacancy sign and a smell like permanent mildew. The air conditioner rattled like a loose shopping cart wheel. I turned it off. I lay in bed scrolling my phone, not really absorbing anything. I kept hearing Derek say his name, Isaiah Keys, on a little loop in my head. I tried to think of other things, what time I'd leave in the morning, where the nearest decent coffee shop might be, but it kept circling back. At exactly 1:11 a.m., I heard a knock. It wasn't forceful, just one single knock. Then a pause, then 2 more. Pause, then 3. I sat up slowly, heart picking up its pace. It hadn't come from the door. It sounded like it came from the adjoining wall between my room and the one next to it. Except I hadn't seen a car in that space outside, and the front desk guy had said they were half empty. I got up and pressed my ear to the wall. Nothing. Just the hum of the fridge and a distant drip. I waited a while, then climbed back into bed and left the lamp on. Around 2:30, just as I was starting to nod off again, I heard coughing. Dry, shallow, uneven, like someone had just finished. Fever and their lungs were still irritated. It came from the closet. I froze, staring at the sliding door across the room. It was closed. Nothing stuck out. No shadows, no movement. The coughing stopped. I waited another 10 minutes, then slowly got out of bed and opened the closet. Nothing. Empty hangers, spare blanket, small safe. I shut it again, then shoved the desk chair in front of it because why not? When I finally lay back down, I stared at the ceiling, eyes wide, until morning. The sun had already cleared the tree line by the time I packed up my things and checked out of the motel. I didn't mention the knocking to the desk clerk. He didn't ask. Just slid me the receipt with one hand while tapping a pen rhythmically against the countertop with the other. The drive home was long, flat, and hot. I kept the windows down halfway despite the drag it caused, even though the AC was working fine. The air felt better when it moved. I tried to rationalize it all. Maybe the knock pattern had been someone in the next room, tapping on the wall for attention. A kid, maybe. Maybe the coughing was something in the pipes. Old plumbing made strange noises, especially at night. I told myself those things again and again as the white lines blurred beneath my tires, but I never believed it. Not completely. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the sky was tinted orange and the cicadas were screaming. My house sat like it always did, quiet, a little tilted from age, one shutter on the upstairs window hanging a bit loose. Nothing waiting for me except a few bills in the mailbox and the faint, sour smell of old coffee when I unlocked the door. Inside, everything was the same. The throw blanket on the couch where I'd left it, the junk mail pile still unread. I flicked on the hallway light and walked toward the bedroom, passing the narrow coat closet along the way. Out of habit, I touched the knob and gave it a gentle pull to check if it was latched. It clicked softly. I didn't think much of it at the time. That first night back, I had trouble sleeping. My mind kept looping back to the service, to Derek, to the way the air in that motel room had felt thinner somehow. But no knocking came, no coughing, just silence. The next day passed quietly too. I worked from home, answered emails, cleaned the bathroom, restocked the fridge, everything routine, nothing out of place. That night though, when I was brushing my teeth, I passed the hallway again, and the closet door was ajar, just slightly, maybe 3 inches, enough to see the darkness between the coats. I stopped, stared. I knew I had closed it. I had this long ingrained habit of making sure the door clicked shut every time. I hated when it hung open even a sliver, like it was watching. I stepped over, pressed it closed, and gave it a firm extra push for good measure. Then I dragged the laundry basket from the bathroom and wedged it against the door. It stayed shut through the night. The second morning I found it open again. Not wide, not dramatic, just the same, 3 inches, same angle, same stillness. I stared at it longer this time, like maybe if I watched hard enough it would blink or breathe. I checked the hinges, nothing loose. I closed it once, stood there, waited. It didn't move, so I left it, walked into the kitchen, made coffee, tried to act like it didn't matter, but my brain kept circling, kept tapping. On the third night, I closed the door again, then put one of my old dumbbells in front of it. 30 pounds of solid iron. No way it would budge without effort. And still, the next morning, it was cracked open. The dumbbell had rolled 2 inches to the side. That was when I stopped pretending. I didn't call anyone. Who would I even call? Hey, something keeps opening my coat closet. Think it's a ghost? No. I kept it to myself, just like I'd kept everything else since the funeral. But something changed that night. Something more than the door. It was about midnight when I walked past the hallway on my way to the kitchen for water, and I noticed something on the floor, just to the right of the closet door, which, of course, was open again. There was a bag, an old duffel, worn canvas, forest green, black strap frayed at the edges. One of the end pockets had a missing zipper tab. I recognized it instantly. It was mine, not recently, not from any trip in the past few years. No, this was the duffel I'd used back in boarding school, the same one I'd packed with ramen, socks, and half-read books. The same one I remembered, losing during finals week, second semester. I'd torn apart the whole dorm looking for it, and finally assumed it had been stolen or trashed during cleaning, and now it was sitting in my hallway. My stomach sank so quickly I felt lightheaded. I crouched slowly, not touching it yet, just staring at the canvas. The zipper was half open, enough to show something dark inside. I braced myself and pulled it open the rest of the way. Inside was a folded sweatshirt, navy blue, thin from years of wear. I reached in and pulled it out. It was damp, cold, not wet like from a washer, but cold like it had been buried somewhere deep and airless. I unfolded it and checked the inside tag. There, stitched in small black thread, was the name, iKeys. I dropped it like it had teeth. It landed with a heavy slap on the floorboards, limp but wrong. I backed away, hand to my chest like something had hit me. This wasn't just memory now, wasn't grief or hallucination. This was something returning. I left the duffel where it was. I didn't sleep that night. In the morning, it was gone, not moved, gone. The floor was bare, no sign of water. No damp patch, no dust outline. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or terrified. That evening I made a decision. I locked the closet door, dug through the junk drawer for a little sliding latch, and installed it right then and there. It felt stupid, like putting a lock on your fridge to keep out ghosts, but I needed a line drawn, needed one small control back in my hands. I went to bed early, exhausted but wired. Around 1 a.m. I woke up for no reason, just opened my eyes and felt wrong. The air felt too still, not heavy, just held. I listened. There it was again. 1 knock, pause, 2 knocks, pause, 3 knocks, but not on the front door, not the closet. It came from inside the wall, the one that ran down the hallway, right behind the closet. It was hollow. I knew that because I'd tapped it once before when hanging a photo. Just thin drywall, no insulation. I sat up slowly, turned on the lamp. The knocks didn't repeat, but they didn't need to. They lived in the silence after. I stood, walked to the hallway barefoot, and placed my ear to the wall beside the closet. Nothing, but the wood beneath me felt uneven. I stepped back and crouched, ran my hand along the baseboard, right in front of the closet. The floorboard gave slightly. Not much, Just a faint shift, like something under it wasn't packed right. I didn't pry it up, couldn't bring myself to. I stood there for a long time, staring at the door I'd latched just hours earlier. It was still closed, but something was shifting behind the wall. I could feel it through the floorboards, a soft pressure under the wood. The air smelled faintly sour, like old plaster and wet cloth. I stepped back without taking my eyes off the wall, my breath tight in my throat. That was when I heard the first deep, slow inhale. Not from my own lungs. It came from behind the wall. It lasted 3 seconds, then silence. Then another breath. This one shakier, less full, like someone trying to fill a collapsed lung. I didn't move. I just stood there barefoot in the hallway, back tense, ears tuned to every inch of drywall like I'd hear the studs creak from weight. But nothing followed. No footsteps, no whisper. Just the hush of my house pretending to sleep. Eventually, I backed into my bedroom without taking my eyes off that part of the wall. I locked the door. Not that it would matter. I didn't sleep, not really. Maybe 30 minutes of a light, twitchy half-doze. Every time I closed my eyes, I thought I heard it again. The wheeze, the drag of a breath somewhere close. Like the room was sharing its air. By morning, I felt like I'd been underwater for days. I made coffee and didn't drink it. I checked every vent in the hallway. None of them connected directly to the wall beside the closet. The nearest duct was across the ceiling, feeding the living room. I went outside and walked the length of the house, standing in the dew-soaked grass in socks. The spot where I'd heard the breathing? No external features, just blank siding, no window, no access panel, no crawl space hatch. It was wall. Just wall. But it wasn't empty. I called an electrician around noon. I told him I was hearing strange air pressure shifts in the house, maybe a return vent blocked or some kind of backdraft through the walls. He arrived 2 hours later, a tall guy in his 60s with a big belt and calloused fingers. Name was Marlon. I liked him immediately. I didn't tell him about the duffel, or the knocks, or the breathing. I just gestured to the hallway and said, "It's mostly behind that closet. Feels like pressure fluctuations. Sometimes I hear it at night." He nodded. Could be a blocked flex duct, maybe a raccoon nesting in the return line. "You hear scratching?" "Not scratching," I said, "more like breathing." He raised an eyebrow. "Breathing?" I tried to shrug it off. Could be pipes. Or maybe I'm just hyper-aware. Marlon set his tool bag down and climbed into the attic through the ceiling hatch in the laundry room. I waited downstairs, pacing. Every few minutes I'd hear muffled thumps from above, and once a dull metallic clang. Then it got quiet. Too quiet. I stood beneath the attic hatch and called up, "Everything okay?" No answer. The silence stretched long enough that my hands started to sweat. Then the hatch creaked. A hand appeared. Marlon climbed down, face pale, jaw clenched. "You find anything?" He shook his head slowly. "No animals, no nests, vents are clear, no signs of water damage, insulation's intact, no drafts." "Okay," I said, trying to interpret his expression. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, as he packed up, he added, "I don't know what kind of noises you're hearing, but I'll tell you this." He glanced up at the hallway ceiling. "You shouldn't go poking around up there by yourself." I frowned. "Why?" He picked up his bag and walked to the door. "Some things don't want to be found." Then he left. I stood there in my living room for a long time, staring at the spot where he'd stopped. That night I turned off every light in the house except for the one in the bathroom. I didn't want total darkness, but I didn't want shadows chasing each other either. I lay in bed with the door locked again, listening. At 2:14 a.m., I heard the breath. It started soft this time, barely audible, then stronger, wet, rattling, like whoever it was had fluid in their lungs. I sat up and stared at the vent near the floor by my dresser. The sound wasn't coming from it. It wasn't coming from anywhere visible. It was behind me. I turned my head slightly. The breath grew louder. I turned back. It dimmed. I stood slowly, crossed the room and opened the door. The hallway was empty. The closet was closed. The floor was bare, but as I stood there, motionless, the air thickened. Not colder, just heavier, like the house had stopped cycling air. Then I had a thought, a stupid, panicked, spiraling thought. What if it's trying to match my breathing? I took a shallow inhale, then exhaled. No echo. I did it again, this time slower. Still nothing. Then, almost defiantly, I inhaled sharply and held it. The moment I stopped breathing, the other breath continued. It rasped out from behind the wall. It wasn't mimicking me, it was watching me. I didn't remember sitting back down, but suddenly I was on the edge of the bed, hands white-knuckled against my knees. I stayed like that until the sun cracked the blinds. When I looked at my phone, I noticed a new voicemail. No missed call, just a message. I opened it. At first, it was only static, a low hum that pulsed in and out like someone adjusting the signal. Then, behind it, something clearer emerged, a whisper. My name, once, quiet, close. Then silence. I played it again, same result. I checked the timestamp, 3:13 a.m. I never gave my number out at the memorial, not even to Derek. I held the phone for a long time, staring at the screen until it dimmed. Then I went into my settings and disabled voicemail entirely, deleted the file, cleared my recent calls, erased the backup. That night, I kept every light in the house on. I stayed in the living room, blanket over my shoulders, TV volume barely audible, not watching, just keeping sound between me and the silence. At 3 a.m., the TV flickered. Once, then again. A pop of static, then black. I didn't move. The air felt like someone exhaling against my cheek. My eyes were wide open, but my limbs wouldn't obey me. I just sat there, listening. 3 slow, ragged breaths, one after the other. Then nothing. I stayed on the couch until sunrise. The second the sun broke the blinds, I got dressed and left the house. I didn't eat, didn't shower. I just needed to move. Needed people around me, sounds louder than breathing, lights that didn't flicker from their own decisions. I went to the office even though I'd taken the day off. Told myself I'd sit in the break room and pretend to work, that I'd feel normal just being around other voices. But by the time I got to my desk, something was already wrong. I sat down, powered on the computer. The monitor flicked to life, the usual hum of the CPU starting up. My cubicle was quiet, the only noise coming from the next row where someone was clicking through spreadsheets. Then came the knock. 1. I froze. It came from behind the divider. I waited. 2. My throat went dry. 3. I stood abruptly, chair rolling back. I looked around the corner, no one. The divider backed up against a plain drywall panel that led to a storage closet. Nothing that could knock unless someone was inside. I walked around the entire space. The closet door was locked. No movement. When I came back to my desk, the screen was on the password page, as if it had restarted. I logged in, hands still shaking. Around 11, I went to the break room. I didn't tell anyone what I'd heard. Instead, I just poured a coffee and sat at the corner table by the vending machine, half listening to 2 coworkers talk about their weekend plans. Then, under the hum of the fridge, it came again. 1 knock. I turned slowly. 2. It was coming from the wall to the left of the microwave, a shared wall, the one that separated the break room from the hallway outside accounting. 3. I put the coffee down without drinking it. A guy named Aaron from payroll walked in while I was still staring at the wall. He must have noticed my face because he chuckled and said, "You look like you've seen a ghost, man." I tried to smile, but my mouth didn't move. He pointed at the wall. "Don't worry, this place has rats or something. I hear shit knocking in here all the time, usually just the pipes, unless it's ghosts, in which case I'm screwed because I say dumb stuff out loud all day." I managed a weak laugh. He tapped the wall once. "Sorry, spirits." Just joking. Then he popped open the fridge and grabbed his yogurt. The next morning, his desk was empty. By lunch, someone said he'd called in sick. By the next day, his name was removed from the schedule. Nobody said why. I didn't ask. I left work early, went home, closed all the blinds. I couldn't take the windows. I didn't want to know if someone was watching from the outside or waiting inside the wall again. That night, I sat in front of my laptop and started searching. Something had to explain it. The knocks, the breath, the voice on the voicemail, the return of the duffel bag. Something. I didn't search for ghosts. I didn't search for hauntings. I searched for what happens when you say the dead's name too often. It took hours. Most of the results were about grief, about how speaking a lost loved one's name could help you move on. Some blogs encouraged it. Then I found an old forum buried 3 pages deep, dated layout, mostly dead links. It was called Blood Recalled, all one word. Inside, there were only a few threads. One titled, Why You Shouldn't Say the Name of the Dead More Than Once. It was written by someone with the username Noesleft, posted over 6 years ago. The original message was short. My grandmother from Port-au-Prince told me something I never forgot. Once is mourning, twice is memory, third is invitation. You say the name 3 times, you give them the door. But they don't come back right. They remember what killed them, and they don't forget who let them through. There were no replies, no other posts. I stared at the screen, rereading that line, you give them the door. I thought about the closet, the knocks, the voicemail, the duffel bag. I said his name 3 times. I said it the night of the memorial, laughing. I said it during the speech. I said it again with Derek. I whispered it now, almost involuntarily, mouth barely moving. And that's when the lights flickered. Every lamp in the house dimmed, then came back brighter, not blinking, pulsing. I stood from the desk and turned toward the hallway. From the back of the house, soft and unmistakable, came a voice. Just 3 words. You remember me? I couldn't tell if it came from the walls or the air itself. But it was Isaiah's voice. I knew it. I stepped back, bumped into the desk. The laptop slid forward slightly, its screen fading to black as if the battery had just drained, despite being plugged in. The power didn't go out. The fridge still hummed. The hallway lights still buzzed. Only the screen had gone dark. I shut the laptop, left it on the desk, walked slowly down the hallway, heart thudding so hard it made my ears ring. The closet was shut. I didn't touch it. I stood there a long time. No knock, no breath. I turned and went to the kitchen, flicked on the faucet to break the silence. Water sputtered out normally. I filled a glass, held it between both hands. Then, from the other end of the house, just beneath the static of electricity, beneath the hum of appliances, I heard the knock again. 1, I didn't move. 2, my grip tightened on the glass. 3, I dropped the glass and it shattered. The knocking stopped. I didn't sweep it up. I backed away from the shards and locked myself in the bathroom for an hour, just sitting on the floor, staring at the crack between the door and the tile. When I came out, the power was fine, everything back to normal. Except when I passed the hallway mirror, I saw the closet door was open again, 3 inches wide, same as always. I didn't touch it. I stood at the end of the hallway with my fists clenched, teeth tight against the urge to shut it again. My legs wouldn't move. I just watched the gap like something might crawl through. Nothing did. Eventually, I backed away and slept on the couch, facing the hallway with every light in the house on. When I woke up, the door was shut. I tried to tell myself that was good news. That day, I worked from home, not because I had a reason, but because I wasn't leaving the house again. I didn't trust what might follow me back if I did. I answered emails, joined a few meetings with my camera off, drank 3 cups of coffee just to stay grounded. By noon, I needed air. I walked to the back door to step outside and stopped. It wasn't there. The knob was gone. The frame was gone. There wasn't even a seam where the door should have been. Just wall, smooth painted drywall, seamless, as if it had always been part of the house. I reached out and touched it, solid. I knocked, no echo. I dropped to my knees and scanned the floor, looking for any sign that it had ever existed. Any scratch on the hardwood, any door jamb, any outline beneath the paint. Nothing. I pressed my forehead to the wall and whispered, "No." Then I ran through the house. I checked the front door, still there, I checked the windows, locked. Side door through the laundry room, still there. Only the back door was gone. I turned in a slow circle, heart pounding so loud it made my vision pulse. There had been a deadbolt, a latch, a storm door, a porch light, a welcome mat. Now it was a wall. I leaned back against the opposite wall and slid down to the floor. I stayed there for an hour. When I stood again, I felt dizzy, unbalanced, like the layout of the house had changed by a fraction, like the distance between rooms had stretched or tilted. I tried to ignore it. I turned the TV on loud, made myself eat something, left the windows covered. I didn't want to know if they were still windows at all. By evening, the air was wrong again. The fridge hummed at a slightly higher pitch. The hallway light dimmed when I stepped under it. The floor under my feet felt warmer than usual, like something was running through it that didn't belong there. At 8 p.m., I heard a tap at the front door. Not a knock, a single light tap, then nothing. I didn't answer. I didn't move. At 8:04, another tap. At 8:08, 3. The intervals kept widening. 12 minutes, 16, 23. It went on until almost midnight. I sat curled in the farthest corner of the living room, knees pulled tight to my chest, phone in hand, ready to dial anything. But I didn't. What would I say? Hi, yes, my house is missing a door, and the ghost of my old roommate keeps knocking in threes. Instead, I opened the Notes app and typed Isaiah's name. Just typed it, didn't say it, didn't press send, didn't even save it, just stared at the letters. Then I deleted it. That night, I left every light on again. I wedged a chair under the doorknob of the hallway closet, left the TV running, buried my head under a pillow. Somewhere past 3 a.m., the lights flickered and the TV volume dropped to a whisper. When I pulled the pillow away, the hallway was darker than the rest of the house. The light overhead was still on, but dimmed to a dull orange, like the bulb was filled with rust. I got up slowly, walked barefoot toward the hallway, and stopped short. The duffel bag was there, sitting dead center on the floor. It hadn't been there earlier. I was sure of it. I approached carefully, half expecting it to move. It didn't. I crouched, stared at it for a long time. The zipper was closed this time. I reached out, pinched the end of it between two fingers, and pulled. Inside, the navy sweatshirt, same as before, damp, colder than the room. I pulled it halfway out and stopped. There was something else beneath it. I set the sweatshirt aside. Beneath it, folded neatly, was a set of boarding school dorm sheets, faded from age, the corner of one still marked with the school's laundry tag, St. Dunstan's Dormitory 6. I hadn't seen those in over a decade. I didn't even think I still had them. And beneath those, at the bottom of the bag, was something wrapped in plastic. My breath caught. I reached in, lifted it out, and peeled away the thin wrapping. It was a photo, a Polaroid slightly warped from moisture. It showed the hallway, this hallway, and in the frame, centered, slightly hunched, was a figure standing with its back to the camera, barefoot, arms long at its sides. The closet door behind it was open. My knees buckled and I sat down hard, the photo dropping from my hands. I stared at it from the floor, heart drumming like it wanted out of my chest. The figure wasn't Isaiah, or maybe it was, but not how I remembered him. The proportions were wrong. The neck looked too long. The left arm bent slightly outwards, like the elbow didn't match the rest of the body. I left the bag and the photo where they were and backed into the bedroom, locking the door behind me. I didn't sleep. At 4:12 a.m., the lights blinked once and the hallway went quiet. Not silent, quiet, like someone had finished moving. I waited until morning, then stepped out carefully. The hallway was empty. The bag was gone. The photo, too. But the smell lingered. Not rot, not mildew. Something like earth. Wet earth, still warm from breath. The smell didn't fade for hours. I opened windows. I turned on fans. I burned the last of a lavender candle I'd forgotten in the kitchen drawer. Nothing worked. The scent of warm dirt hung in the air like it had a shape. like it clung to the walls. I stood in the middle of the living room and spoke aloud for the first time. "Isaiah, if this is you, you're scaring me." The sentence came out dry, cracked. I waited. The room didn't respond. I said it again, louder this time. "Isaiah." The lights went out, every one of them, at the same time. Not a flicker, not a surge, just gone. Darkness swallowed the room, thick and instant. I stood frozen, fingers twitching at my sides, heartbeat hammering hard enough to pulse behind my eyes. The TV went silent. The fridge stopped. No hum, no static, no wind through the open windows. The house wasn't dark. It was empty. I didn't dare move. In the stillness, the air shifted. Something deeper than silence crept into the room. A full minute passed. Then a voice came from the hallway. I know. Not loud, not whispered, just present. My knees almost gave out. I stumbled backwards into the kitchen island and gripped the edge. My breath rasped out in a shaky exhale, and the sound felt loud enough to echo. I turned toward the front door, legs already moving, but when I reached for the knob, it didn't turn. I twisted harder. Locked. I flipped the deadbolt back and forth. Useless. It wasn't jammed. It was just sealed. I pulled until my shoulder ached, but the door didn't budge. Behind me, a soft scuff against the floor. I turned slowly. The hallway light was back on, but only one bulb flickered dimly in its glass dome, enough to cast long shadows across the floor. At the far end, just past the closet, the frosted glass door that led to the guest room had fogged over. Something stood behind it. I couldn't see it clearly. The frosted pane blurred the shape, but I could make out the outline. Tall, slightly hunched, arms slack at the sides, head lowered, motionless, not breathing, not shifting. Just there. The fog spread further across the glass, a faint smear as if someone had exhaled against it and then leaned their forehead in close. I took one step back. The floor creaked under my heel. The figure didn't react. I stepped again, slower this time, careful not to make a sound. Then the light in the hallway flared once, buzzing loud. When it settled, the figure was gone. I didn't look for where it went. I backed all the way to the couch, grabbed my phone off the coffee table and checked the screen. Battery, 47%. No service, no Wi-Fi. The entire screen flickered once before holding steady. I turned the flashlight on and swept the beam across the room. Nothing. I turned slowly toward the hallway and crept forward. The closet door was wide open now. The chair I'd wedged beneath the knob was flipped over. Not shattered, not thrown. Just tipped neatly on its side, like someone had taken the time to move it carefully. Inside the closet, everything looked untouched. Coats, shelf, old cardboard boxes, except the photo frames, all of them. Every frame in the hallway, 12 in total, had been turned face down, even the ones on the top shelves, even the one I'd screwed into the wall with 2 anchor bolts. No glass was broken, no noise had alerted me, but the hallway was blank, the past erased in perfect silence. I knelt and turned one over, a picture of me and Isaiah, freshman year. We were standing in front of the dorm fireplace, him with his arms folded and that tired smirk he always did when someone forced him to pose. The photo had changed. The background was the same, but Isaiah was gone. Where he had stood was just empty floorboards. I flipped through more. A group photo of our floor, everyone accounted for except him. One of our dorm room, only my belongings in the background. In each one, his presence had been erased. But in the upper corners on 3 of the prints there were smudges, faint finger marks, the kind you leave when you're holding a photo too tightly. I dropped them and backed away. My chest ached with something sharp, something hot and rising. Not fear, not exactly. It was like memory turning on itself, like a wound unhealing. I stood and went back into the living room, sat on the floor, pressed my back against the wall like it would shield me from what had just happened. The duffel bag was back. I hadn't heard it arrive, hadn't seen it. but it was there again, sitting against the hallway wall where the light from the bathroom barely reached. This time the zipper was open. Nothing inside but the same navy sweatshirt, and underneath it, another photo. This one wasn't from school. It was from 2 nights ago. I was in my bedroom, standing near the closet with the light off. A sliver of hallway light illuminated the side of my face. I wasn't alone. Behind me, in the dark, was the outline of a second figure. Tall, hunched, head down. I dropped the photo and ran into the bathroom, slammed the door, and locked it. I stayed there until daylight. When I came out, the photo was gone. The bag was gone, but the hallway was still lined with face-down frames. Not a single one had shifted. Later that day, I found one of Isaiah's old books on my kitchen counter. One I never owned. I didn't open it. Just sat down across from it and stared for a long time, waiting for whatever came next. By the time evening came, I couldn't remember whether I'd spoken all day. The book was still on the counter, Isaiah's, though I had no idea how it got there. I hadn't touched it. I didn't want to. It looked the same as I remembered it back in school, even down to the crease along the spine. The title was faded, just the edge of a worn sticker still clinging to the cover like it had once been part of a library. I sat on the floor beside the fridge and opened my laptop, hoping distraction would work. Maybe email. Maybe some news article. Anything outside of this house. The fan spun to life. The login screen blinked. I typed my password, hit enter. The screen flashed black and then loaded to my desktop. My mouse moved slower than usual. I opened a browser window and clicked to check work messages. The tab didn't load. Then I saw the microphone icon blinking. Zoom was open. I hadn't launched it. It was recording. I froze and hovered over the taskbar. The small camera preview had been minimized in the corner. I clicked it. There I was, living the feed, pale, eyes sunken from days of sleeplessness. But the background didn't match the room. It was me, in the same clothes, sitting in the same spot. But behind me, the wall was covered in framed photos, all turned inward. I turned around in real time. The wall behind me was bare. I looked back at the screen. The version of me on the camera was speaking. But I wasn't. My mouth moved in the recording, slow and deliberate. The audio kicked in just a moment later, a slight delay like lag on a video call. "You let me back in," it said. I slammed the laptop shut. Every hair on my arm stood on end. My jaw clenched until something behind my ear popped. I grabbed the laptop and opened it again. The screen was black, just a blinking cursor in the center. No Zoom, no browser, nothing. I yanked the power cord and left it on the floor. I checked my phone next. Still no service. Wi-Fi grayed out. The date had changed to 2006. The battery icon read 66%. I turned it off. That night, I unplugged every smart device. I took the batteries out of the remotes. I even shut off the breaker to the room with the hallway light. It didn't matter. Around 2 a.m., I heard myself speaking through the vents, not someone who sounded like me, my voice, repeating one word over and over again, slow and deliberate. Keys, 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 sometimes with a long pause in between, sometimes overlapping like 2 layers of me taking turns with different inflection. I put my hands over my ears, sat down on the bathroom floor, and stared at the bathtub tile. The voice didn't stop. It dropped to a whisper, like it was practicing. Every once in a while it said a different word, broken phrases from old conversations I hadn't had in years. Found the charger. Did you close it? Try not to look. I waited until dawn before stepping out. The house was silent again. I walked into the hallway. Every photo was still face down. The chair I'd used to block the closet had been returned upright. The laptop, still closed on the kitchen floor, buzzed once beneath my foot. I lifted it and checked the screen. The Zoom app was running again. This time, it was just black, audio only. I clicked the playback bar. It started with white noise, then static, then breath, then the sound of my own voice. But not now, a recording from the past, something I'd said in college. I remembered it. It was from the night we'd stayed up late arguing about music. Isaiah had hit record on his old iPod as a joke. I'd forgotten it even existed. "I'm just saying," my recorded voice said. "You can't call it jazz if there's no form." Isaiah had laughed. "There's form in chaos." The audio cut out. I clicked through the playback again. There was another fragment, this one of me sleep-talking. A low mumble, "Don't shut it, leave it cracked." The air grew heavier. The third clip had no context, just me saying, "Keys, keys, keys." I clicked delete. The screen froze. The icon blinked. A message appeared. "File cannot be removed." I slammed the lid shut and threw the laptop onto the couch. I needed it gone. All of it. The recordings, the bag, the sweatshirt, the book. I grabbed a trash bag and started collecting anything tied to Isaiah, anything I hadn't owned before the funeral. The book on the counter, the old school sweatshirt I'd kept in the back of my closet, the Polaroid I'd found by the duffel. I'd hidden it in the back of a drawer, but it was back in the kitchen now, under my coffee mug. I dumped it all in the bag. I went outside to the alley and threw it into the trash bin. By the time I came back inside, the duffel bag was sitting on the hallway floor again. The zipper open. No contents, just the photo. This time the photo was of me standing at the alley dumpster, holding the trash bag, looking back toward the camera. I didn't remember turning. I didn't remember anyone standing there. I stared at the image for a long time before picking it up and tearing it in half, then into quarters. I flushed the pieces down the toilet one by one. As I stood over the bowl, I caught my reflection in the mirror, except it wasn't following me. I moved my head left. The reflection moved slow, lagging. My lips were still. The reflection whispered. I turned off the light and left the bathroom. That night, the voicemail came back. Same number, same timestamp, 3:13 a.m. Same file name. I hit play. The same whisper began, only this time, beneath it, another voice layered over, softer, deeper. It said, "It's okay to say it again." I deleted it. The file reappeared 3 minutes later. I didn't play it again. I put my phone in the freezer and sat on the living room floor with my back to the wall. The duffel was sitting across from me. This time, it was wet, not damp, soaked through. Pooled water had gathered on the hardwood beneath it, warping the floor in waves like it had been left there for days. I could smell it from where I sat, dirt and mildew and something deeper, like breath passed through stale wood. I didn't touch it. I just stared at it until the lights dimmed and I could no longer see. The next morning, I didn't move for a long time. I lay on the floor, eyes open, staring at the ceiling where the light fixture still pulsed a faint yellow. Something about the way it flickered felt slower now, more deliberate. I hadn't replaced that bulb in over a year. It had no reason to still be working. Eventually I stood. My joints cracked like I hadn't moved in weeks. The house was quiet, but not in a natural way. The silence felt too symmetrical, too balanced. No creaks, no cars passing outside, no refrigerator hum. I didn't know what time it was. I didn't check. My phone was still in the freezer. I walked barefoot across the warped floor and stood over the duffel bag. It was still soaked. The puddle had spread an extra few inches, curling into the grooves between floorboards. I didn't touch it. Instead, I grabbed the car keys and left. I didn't lock the door. I didn't close it behind me. I just got in a car and drove with no plan. I passed through the city, through the industrial strip, past the cemetery, until I found myself on the edge of a wooded back road I hadn't driven in years. The church there was small, almost invisible from the road. No cross out front, just a peeling wood sign with whitewashed lettering, St. Mercy's Chapel, Asti, 1912. It looked empty, but there was a rusted mailbox out front with a stack of folded pamphlets inside. I didn't open one. I stood by the steps, unsure what I was looking for. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the air was dry, like time didn't pass here. Candles sat unlit in rows of iron sconces. Dust coated the pews like powder. At the back, I found an office, mostly empty except for a small bookshelf and a cracked leather chair. I sat in it for a while. Eventually, an old man stepped in. White shirt, tan skin, linen pants, barefoot. He didn't look surprised to see me, just studied me quietly. "Do you need help?" he asked. I didn't know what to say. The words felt thick in my throat, like speaking them would make everything worse. I looked down at my hands. I said, "There's someone I used to know." I said his name. The man stepped closer, folded his hands in front of him. "How many times?" I looked up. "What? Did you say it more than once?" I nodded. He didn't blink. "You shouldn't say their name again." "I didn't mean to. I didn't know." He looked at the floor and then back at me. "Doesn't matter if you meant it. The name was enough." I swallowed hard. "Is he back?" The old man didn't answer right away. Then he said, "They never come back the way they left. They don't bring themselves. They bring what hurt them. That's all that sticks." I gripped the arm of the chair. "What do I do now?" "Don't say it again. I haven't, not in days. I've avoided it." The man raised a hand. "You already let him through. Once the name is named 3 times, the mouth opens. If you say it again, with intent, he stays. Fully." "Stays where?" The man didn't answer. I left without saying anything more. The drive back felt longer. My limbs ached like I'd walked for miles. I kept checking the mirrors, expecting to see someone in the back seat. When I reached home, the door I'd left open was shut, locked from the inside. I stood on the porch, heart dropping, hands cold. Then I remembered the windows. I walked around the side and checked the bedroom. Open, not just cracked, propped all the way up, curtain blowing faintly in the breeze. I climbed through slowly, careful not to make noise. The house felt still again, but not empty. I moved through it one room at a time, checking behind doors, inside closets, beneath tables. Nothing. Then I stepped into the bathroom and stopped. The mirror was fogged over. There was no steam. I hadn't showered. The sink hadn't been used, but the mirror was coated in condensation, thin beads dripping downward. In the center, wiped clear by a single swipe, was a message. 3 words. "Say it again." The letters were long, written with a fingertip, sloped slightly to the right like someone unpracticed with writing had tried their best to shape the words. I reached for a towel, wiped the mirror clean. It fogged again instantly. I turned and left. In the living room, the laptop was open. I hadn't touched it. The Zoom window was minimized, but the mic was hot. I could see the audio bar pulsing. It was already recording. I didn't speak. I walked to it slowly, moved the cursor, and dragged the window back to full screen. The image of me blinked on. Behind me, the hallway was visible. The closet door opened as I watched. The bag sat just inside the threshold. Then a shape passed by the doorway. Too fast to see clearly, just a blur, like a frame skipped in a video file. I stopped the recording. A pop-up appeared instantly. Recording failed to save. Retry? I clicked cancel. The screen dimmed. The voice from earlier started again, playing through the speaker. My voice layered and slowed. "You already know his name. You already said it." I unplugged the laptop, closed the lid, and shoved it under the couch. In the hallway, every single photo had been turned inward, not just face down, but removed, flipped, and put back. The back panels exposed, thumbtacks missing. I stared at the empty wood backs and realized something else. They weren't mine. These weren't the same photo frames I owned. I leaned in. All the frames were different, slightly larger, some older, a few scratched. One had peeling gold trim. They'd been replaced. All of them. I turned back toward the kitchen and caught movement near the corner of the ceiling. A damp stain had begun to form above the hallway, a perfect square. As I stared at it, a drop fell from the center, then another. No sound, no pipes above. The ceiling continued to drip steadily until the outline of the square had darkened the entire panel. I stepped away. At the front door, I reached for the knob. Still sealed. I pulled hard. The wood didn't creak, didn't shift. It might as well have been a painted wall. I backed away slowly and turned toward the hallway again. The bag was sitting upright now. On top of it, one final item I hadn't seen before, a piece of torn wood, shaped roughly into a plaque, and carved into the center. The name I hadn't spoken in days, first and last, burned into the grain. I didn't say it. I didn't let myself read it aloud. I turned and walked into the farthest corner of the house, sat on the floor, and closed my eyes. Outside, the wind had stopped. The walls no longer breathed, but the silence inside the house had taken shape, and it was waiting. The silence felt dense, like it had weight. I kept my eyes closed and tried to outwait it, but time had thinned in the house. Minutes passed without meaning. The air didn't shift, no creaks from the walls, not even the natural hum of distant traffic through the windows. Eventually, I opened my eyes. The carved wooden plaque was gone. The hallway looked the same. Dim light, wet square still darkening the ceiling panel, but the duffel was gone too. The closet was closed again, sealed perfectly, no sign of forced movement. I didn't move from the floor. I just sat there, legs drawn tight to my chest, palms flat on the hardwood. Then my phone rang. I stared at the empty corner of the room for a second before remembering where I'd left it. I got up, walked slowly to the freezer, opened it, and reached into the cold. The screen lit up with a number I didn't recognize, just 10 sevens in a row. I let it ring once, twice, then I answered. I didn't speak. At first, nothing on the other end. Then the faint crackle of static. I started to pull the phone away when I heard a breath, just one, deep and full and close. Then a voice said, "You called me." I didn't respond. The voice was mine, but it wasn't a recording. It wasn't layered, it was responding. I waited, it said again. "You said it. I heard you." The call cut out. I dropped the phone on the counter and backed away from it like it might explode. I didn't pick it up again. I paced through the living room, gripping the sides of my head, my own voice repeating back at me. The plaque, the bag, the photos, the fogged mirror. The voice was right. I had said his name again, 4 times now. Once when I whispered it at the church, 3 times before that, at the funeral, with Derek in my own eulogy. But this time it wasn't memory. This time I'd said it with intention. I'd thought it, focused it, I meant it. I sat down hard in the hallway. My hand brushed something slick. The floor was wet again, but the stain on the ceiling had stopped dripping. I looked up. The square panel that had been sagging slightly, just enough to warp, was now raised clean and flat, like it had never sagged at all. I stood and approached it. The puddle below had spread almost perfectly outward, as if something had been placed there and then lifted. I stepped carefully over it and into the kitchen. The lights went out. Not the whole house, just the ones behind me. They clicked off one by one. I turned slowly. The hallway was now lit only by the faint amber glow of the bathroom light at the far end. Everything else had gone dark. Then the bedroom door creaked. Not loudly, not wide, just an inch, then 2. The crack between the door and frame glowed faintly with soft light, not from inside the room, but as if something stood just outside the door, blocking the light from within. I stared at it, frozen. The door stopped moving. My breath was so loud I could barely hear anything else. Then came the first sound, not a knock, not a breath. A footstep, soft, bare. It landed in the hallway, then another. I didn't move. My legs refused. A shape passed in front of the bathroom door, just enough for the light to break across it. Tall, slouched, barefoot, the crown of the head tilting forward, the skin too pale. It walked with the weight of familiarity. Not stumbling, not disjointed. It knew the floor, it knew the layout, it knew me. I backed into the kitchen, hand brushing the counter as I moved. The shadow moved with deliberate rhythm, each footfall matching a heartbeat, slow and constant. Then it stopped, right at the center of the hallway, between the closet and the bedroom door. It didn't turn, didn't speak, just stood. I held my breath. The hallway light above it buzzed faintly, casting a narrow glow across the spine of its back. It crouched, low, slowly, and reached for the closet door. The knob turned with a quiet click. It opened the door. The inside was black, and from within it, the humming started. A low, warbling hum, not musical, just a long, rhythmic tone, familiar in the most terrible way. It was the tune Isaiah used to hum when he couldn't sleep. I stepped backwards into the living room, unable to feel my feet. The humming continued, and then a word spoken in a breath, "Keys," from behind me. I spun around. No one was there, but the voice hadn't come from the hallway. It had come from the vent beside the couch, the living room vent. The voice repeated, "Keys," then softer, "Keys," again. The hallway light cut out. Darkness swept toward me. I backed into the corner of the room, blinking hard, searching for the shape. Nothing. I crawled across the floor, felt for the duffel bag, for the plaque, for anything. Gone. The air shifted, no wind, no movement, just presence. Behind me, the floor creaked again. I lay down, slid under the couch, chest pressed to the ground. The space was shallow, barely enough to turn my head. Then I heard the door to the hallway closet click shut. Soft footsteps moved past the opening of the room. They stopped 3 feet from the couch. The shape shifted. Bent, crouched, I saw 2 feet, bare, mud-caked, standing just past the lip of the carpet. The humming began again, low, measured, a half-step melody that stopped halfway through each line like a memory being built wrong. Then silence. The feet didn't move. The humming didn't resume. Something lowered to its knees. I watched the shadows shift beneath the couch. A hand touched the floor, thin fingers, too long. The nails were cracked, one was missing. It reached out, stopped just short of the edge of the couch, then slowly retracted. The feet stood again, walked away, toward the closet, back to the hallway, then the door closed again. I lay there for a long time. I didn't move until the light came back. When I slid out from under the couch, the house looked the same, but nothing was the same. I didn't speak, I didn't whisper, I just listened. The humming had stopped, for now. I didn't open the closet again the rest of that night. The air in the house stayed still but not peaceful, like everything had pressed itself against the walls, flattening out just enough to avoid detection. Even the shadows didn't move anymore. They just waited, perfectly still. I stayed on the living room floor until the light through the window told me it was morning, though I don't remember seeing the sun. I got up and moved like someone else had lived in my skin before me. I had no strength left for carefulness. I didn't shower, I didn't eat. I just went to the garage and found the only thing I still trusted, my hands. I pulled down the old box of woodworking tools, blew the dust off the top, and dug out the thickest block of oak I could find, the kind used for stair treads. I carried it into the kitchen and set it on the counter. I didn't let myself think about it. I carved the name by hand, each letter deeper than the last. No flourishes, no clean lines, just pressure, just repetition. I made the blade sing against the grain. The name burned into the wood like it had always been there. Every syllable. No hesitation. The first time I carved it, it felt like a thought. The second, like a memory. The third, like an opening. But this time was different. This time, I didn't speak it. This time, I kept my mouth shut. When I was done, I wrapped the wood in an old flannel shirt and carried it into the backyard. The grass felt damp under my feet, but the sky overhead was cloudless. I dug a pit in the middle of the yard. Not deep, just wide enough to lay the plank flat. I poured lighter fluid over it until the smell turned sharp, chemical, dangerous. Then I struck a match, held it above the shirt. For a second, the wind died. The flame trembled, and in that brief pause between ignition and collapse, I thought I heard it. The hum, faint, from beneath the ground, like it had gotten there first. I dropped the match anyway. The fire caught. It took faster than I expected, dry cotton and soaked wood erupting into crackling orange. The smoke turned black immediately, curling in shapes that twisted and tried to form something before breaking apart. I stepped back. I didn't look away, not once. The plank hissed as it burned. The carved name darkened, blistered, then cracked. The wood folded inward, turning soft at the center. The air in the yard pulled tight, then it broke open with a sound like breath held too long. The fire snapped hard to one side. A gust of wind knocked me back a step, then silence. I waited. The embers turned red, then black. The pit glowed like a wound cooling shut. I covered it with dirt, patted it flat, went back inside. The hallway was darker. The closet door was closed. The bag was gone. The walls had dried. No more dripping, no more stains. I stood there and listened. No humming, no breath, nothing behind the vents. I sat on the floor again and stayed there until nightfall. Then I slept. For the first time in over a week, I slept all the way through. No knocks, no static, no footsteps, just sleep. When I woke up, the house smelled like nothing. No dust, no rot, just still air. The photos on the hallway wall were still reversed, but I didn't touch them. I didn't put anything back. I didn't check the laptop. I left the house just after noon, went for a walk. The sky was heavy with heat, but the wind was cool. I didn't check my phone. I didn't say his name. 2 weeks later, I passed a public bench on the far side of the park, half hidden in the shade of a tree that hadn't fully bloomed yet. The duffel bag was sitting on it. Green canvas, frayed strap, the zipper slightly open. I stopped walking, stared at it from the path. No one else nearby, no footsteps, no joggers. The street behind me was quiet. I didn't approach, didn't move closer, didn't touch it. I just stood there, listening. The wind blew once, the zipper lifted slightly, but there was no breath, no voice, no name.